put out a request for a white paper on how do we improve sustainability and innovation, or business continuity and innovation within the training academy domain. And that winner is here with us today, and he will be presenting a paper for us on that winning idea. He's none other than Mr. Sandiso Twala, who's the acting, let me just make sure, acting principal for air traffic services officers at OR Tambo. So he's typically managing the staff of the Flight Information Service, Oceanic, as well as one that I can't remember now. Let me go back to my notes, you see. Multi-sector planner, there you go. So he's obviously versed in those disciplines, and he manages the staff, or is assisting in managing the staff there as well, under the leadership of the pool manager, which is Zandile Sokacha. She's here today. She'll be taking notes for his next performance discussion as well. So may we please invite Mr. Sandiso Twala to the stage.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I don't think I have audio. Can you all hear me? No.
Could we kindly switch his mic on?
Can you hear me now? No, let me just see. Yeah.
Okay, maybe in the meantime.
Let me just take that.
It's the one.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. I'd like to draw. All right, so there was a call by the ATA to present a paper that would be innovative and that would address certain challenges in terms of them becoming more sustainable, and actually looking at their business processes and how they can use innovation to improve the ATA. All right. That's not my slide. Go back actually.
Okay, so would that be yours?
Yes. So I just press
that's on forward. This one.
Thank you. All right. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of a background in terms of what's currently the setup is at the ATM. The ATA is an excellent institution of training. They train all the air traffic controllers, and they train all the engineering technicians. But there is two elements to this. There is a theoretical training that the air traffic controllers go to, which is a classroom setup, where they sit for lecturers, have classroom discussions, and they have exams, which are all basically paper-based, you know. And there is also the practical aspect of it, where they have simulators that train the ATCs to simulate a real-life environment. And at this stage, it's important to address the part of the theoretical-based training, where they are not really using, I would say, innovation or technology, in a sense. Even though the simulators are high-tech and they are very realistic in terms of representing traffic situation. But there is certain challenges with the manual system. If you're using a manual system, I'm talking about the way you deliver your classes, the paper-based element of it. And I've put some of it there where I address it, such as capacity. There is limited space. You can only sit so many people in a classroom. And that sort of limits the people who have access to your programs. And it also limits how long you can run your programs. And I'll address that later. Resources. You use a lot of resources when you have people sitting in a classroom environment and using paper, using more electricity, water, and basically personal hours. And there is also an environmental aspect to it. If you think about commuting to the ATA every day, using fuel, basically there is an environmental aspect to it and how you impact the environment. Financial implications, it also costs a lot of money to run these programs. And you can even think of international students who have to travel and come to the ATA to get their theoretical training and also the practical. And you can address all of that using innovative technology. And second last point, human error and subjectivity. It plays a role in how accurate you can be in terms of the system you are using. And this is where technology comes in also to assist us. And lastly, interactivity is, there is interaction between the lecturer and the students, obviously, and the discussions and all of that. But what I'm talking about here in terms of interactivity is using technology in a way that is more visual, more stimulating for the student. And again, this is where technology can address it. So you can think of e-learning. Everybody has seen a website where you can go, study a course, get your marks, submit assignments, and all of that. But I want you to consider it in a way that is integrating not just a website, but also bringing your own device, or you having a tablet or a smartphone or some kind of tablet that is specifically meant for the classroom, where you come sit down, there is your tablet, it's got all your activities, it's got the different apps, and as you're sitting with the instructor, you can get feedback, he can ask questions, or you can progress as you go with the module and you complete some tasks. Computers, there's a lot of manual energy that is put by one instructor trying to run a class or a module. But if you leverage that with the power of computers, you can actually get more done, because they do most of the heavy lifting. They do the calculations, they do the analysis. You can look at a module or a course and see how it's actually performing. You can zoom in into specific tasks within that course and see where you are not, where it's not performing, and you can start tweaking your modules in a way that is more relevant. Or you can start addressing more of the challenging tasks, because as they interact with the system, they actually, you will get a sense of, okay, I need to change that and that. And this is where computers come in. And with computers also comes connectivity, internet. It means that if you look at it in that way, the ATA can actually start opening its modules out to more students who wouldn't have had access to those modules, especially, let's say, they're living in international students in a foreign country who would not have afforded maybe most of the cost of traveling and coming to the ATA. They can use this system. They can actually start commence with their theoretical modules while they are in their home country, in a space that they are familiar with their family. And they can come fly in to do the simulators, and that is cost-cutting for them. And in that sense, the ATA gets to use that extra capacity to do other things because they don't have people sitting in the classrooms. They only have them half of the time. And they can use that resources they have to actually acquire more simulators instead of that theoretical component on it. And the previous speakers spoke largely on artificial intelligence. And it depends on the system that you implement. I mean, it can be a cheapest system all the way to the most expensive system. But what runs behind is what's important. There is a powerful computer behind that is actually tapping in, using artificial intelligence, and that translates to adaptive learning, where the student, you get feedback and you adjust the course automatically, or specifically for the student. Especially if they have their own tablet, they're sitting with their own login. It's basically, that's their identity. And if they're falling behind, then the system will pick it up and keep giving them more of those tasks, or changing them or restating them, putting them in a different context for the student. There's also quite a lot of features if you think of e-learning solution. There's video, there's pictures, text, and you can use all of that. And you have different clients who might not have fast internet. They might only need pictures or text. And you might have clients that have access to 3G and lately 4G. And they can access all of that material through video and even live video teleconferencing. And there is a cheap option to start out with an e-learning solution. And that comes in a form of a system called Moodle. A lot of people might have heard Moodle, maybe a university, UKZN or VET's Moodle. And that's just the system. It's not someone's surname. It's just the system that they use to put up the courses and allow the students to interact and track the progress. And this is completely free to use and to download and put it in your own servers. And that's where the cheap solution comes in. I thought I must just expand more on the Moodle. As you can see, Moodle is a content management system. Basically, a content management system is, you can think of, if you've heard of WordPress. WordPress allows people to build websites. Even if you're not an expert, you can start fiddling around and putting up photos and putting up text or a blog. And if you're an expert, you can even go behind the scenes and tweak it. And that's where it starts. So Moodle is a content management system similar to WordPress, but for learning or for education. And you can expand it by putting more apps into it, which expand the system to whatever you like. You can get a programmer who can build specific apps that plug into the system for you. And it's very easy. It's a free solution to start up. You already have servers in your own company that can host websites. And that's basically what you need. And the personnel that you have that are running those servers can install the system, and then you can start having your instructors putting up content on it. And that's where you start. And it'll be completely free, and you won't have to spend any money. But if you have a little bit more money, you can hire a Moodle partner, people who are actually experts in the field of Moodle, and they know it inside out, and they can give you all of that. So as you can see, there's features like creating courses, tracking the progress, multimedia, which is your videos, your audio, you can put slides, and you can even have a chat between the instructor and the student. And how I looked at it is from a perspective of how does the ATA access more students. And this is where partnering from the ATNS will come. They can even offer flight schools to do part of their theoretical training. And there's no reason why they can't. They can even have a guest pilot instructor who can cover those modules. And the ATA can be a destination for all aviation-related teaching and learning. So I'm just going to go through some available technologies before I explain how to actually apply them in the ATA context. So you've got video teleconferencing. Many people know this. It will be maybe in a projector, and you can have a projector that is large enough to cover a wall. And you have students in another country sitting, interacting with the same class, and the lecturer is basically talking to all of them. And the students on the other side, they see exactly what's happening here, and they can jump in and ask questions where from the safety of or comfort of their own countries and homes. Even local students, you don't have to travel from Cape Town, come to the ATA. You can sit there in Cape Town, join in on the teleconference, and that is the technology that's already in use in the company. Again, I looked at it from a financial perspective. You don't need to buy something else. With the video teleconferencing, it brings in that face-to-face interaction between the instructor and the students versus only looking at a website where they are looking at the e-learning, for instance, model, and they are just sitting on a desk somewhere marking, or the system marks it itself and he gets a report. It's more interactive. All right. Also, it also depends on your internet connectivity, and you can adjust all these things to the needs of your client. If they require just a text-based system or a photo-based with slides and all of that, and interacting with the lecturer through a chat, they can use the Moodle system. They can have a forum online where they interact with other students also, and the system allows you to do that. Here's another concept that is growing: 3D holographic projections. Some of you might have seen the president being projected in a hologram while giving a speech, and he was also being seen in another location where he was also at a stage there via a holographic projection. And this is also possible for teaching and learning. You can project the instructor to different locations, and the people there, they can almost get a sense of the real person behind this course delivery, rather than watching it over a screen. And then again, it all depends. This will probably cost more money, and they will also need to have a system to project it that side. But you can just imagine the things you could do with this. You can even project objects into the classroom. If you're talking about drones, you can bring a drone into the classroom using this. If you're talking about engineering technicians and they're looking at a piece of equipment that's not around, they can bring into the classroom using that kind of holographic imaging. And this can be streamed live, or it can be recorded. So if it's recorded, you can just bring it back, replay for the next class. If it's streamed live again, it can be beamed to the different locations. I'm running out of time. There's quite a lot that I had. So you all know computers, desktops, and tablets. I did say that is also an element that you can bring into the classroom and interact real time with the students. And again, that's just a rerun of the challenges that the manual system would have versus a technological system in theoretical training. And looking at capacity for training, you've got e-learning systems. You can accommodate more people by some staying wherever they are instead of coming into the classroom. And with that extra capacity that you have, you can decide now if you want to put in more courses or just save more money by not spending more resources that day. So you use less paper with tablets, you use less water, you use, especially if, say, students sitting there, they take one day, maybe on a Friday, they don't come, they just interact with the system from their lodges, and they talk to each other on the forum, peer review, and submit assignments during that day. Then they don't have to commute and spend more money and affect the environment in that way. So that's where the environmental aspect comes in. Noise pollution and fuel that is being burnt and polluting the air. Financial implication, obviously you save more money. You're printing more paper. Over time, that will cost more than just buying a tablet. So you can think of it that way. And like I said, if you have students sitting at home or from their own locations, you don't have to spend more money. Accuracy, like I said, artificial intelligence, adaptive learning, and statistical analysis. The system will tell you who's performing, what course is performing better, and what do you need to improve on. You don't have to go and manually calculate all of that.
Excuse me, Mr. Twala. My apologies. We are a bit short on time. Could you kindly wrap up your presentation?
All right. So, in closing, I just want to close by saying you can imagine an ATA where as you come in through the door, you've got your tablet on, connects to the Wi-Fi. It starts pushing messages to you, telling you your program for the day. It starts directing you wherever you need to go via a map to the class that you need to attend. And all that is possible through technology. You have information ports sitting wherever you need to, just like you've seen at a mall. And that will also have information for you. You pick into a class, you see in a classroom, there's projectors or screens all around, and there's more students being accommodated who are actually sitting remotely amongst the other students that are sitting in the classroom. You pick into another room, you see there's a drone being projected here, and they're learning about that. So it's all possible, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And that was my take on it.
Thank you, Mr. Twala, and congratulations once again. Unfortunately, we cannot take questions right now. But if you have any questions for Mr. Twala, please do ask him during the tea break. Thank you. We'd like to remind you to give feedback on the speakers and panelists, and please do rate them as well. Could the tech team kindly show everyone where they can find the feedback button? And before we convene for tea, we will be taking the AVIAFRIQUE 2019 Innovation Summit group photo. If we could kindly, before we take the group photo on the stage, the team is just going to show us the feedback button. Is this the feedback button? Okay. There you go. You just post the, no, that's for the question. The feedback is that where they leave the feedback as well? Okay. So they say you can just post your comment, feedback, and rating there. Thank you. If we could all kindly gather on the stage to take the group photo for this year, please. And right after the group photo, we will be convening for tea, and we do request that you all come back at 11 o'clock sharp, please.
Hi, I'm sure you'd like to have a tea break. If you can please just move more to the center. We want to be able to see Avi Afrique. There's more space aside. We want to see your beautiful faces. Everybody who came here today is very important. Lerato? Can you please come the side or move the side? If you can stand on your side like this, will create more space. There we go. And then squash in, squash in. Let's love each other. That's the board member. Pardon? Oh yeah, make sure your face, in the gap between the people in front of you. We want that beautiful face. Sir, I don't see you. We fine? Yes, please. Please come through. Hey. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Please just make sure we're back in at 11 o'clock. You can bring your coffee and tea back into the main hall. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we may have your attention again, welcome back. Mr. Tiba wants to show off some technology before we introduce the next speaker. I think he's...
For what? Can I carry on?
Should I speak? You need a mic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed your tea. We'd like to reiterate that we'd like your comments on the speakers, panelists, and the moderators. You can do this by following this link, which leads you to the app. That will then show the screen. You then scroll down to the specific speaker that you want to rate. For example, Mr. Adnan Teba, you click on him there, and right under his name there, you can post your comment. And please do rate him as well, and all the other speakers and panelists. We'd also like you to post your general feedback, please. You can do so by following the link. There you go. No, sorry, that is the wrong link. There you go. That is the link for the general feedback. For the general feedback, there are 4 sections that you can rate. You can rate the speakers overall, the topics overall, the food, and the venue. And right at the bottom, you can leave your general comments.
Ladies and gents, so this is going to be a bit unorthodox. I'm coming to you from the back of the room. I was asked to do this little demo as an intro to the next speaker. And so this is a live demo. I'm going to do it really quickly because we've only got 2 minutes and I've got to be out of here by 12 for mosque. So the one I'm going to show you here is an app built by a colleague of mine. Her name is Anne. You can check out on YouTube as well. She's visually impaired. Really, really powerful. The app is called Seeing AI, Seeing Artificial Intelligence, like physically seeing it. Now remember, she's visually impaired. And this is just cognitive services in an app that you're seeing on my phone. It's the first icon on your left, the turquoise icon. And I'm going to run some of these services. So when you open the app, it's blank. You're seeing the camera, you're seeing yourselves. And the first API I'm going to use is this one called handwriting at the bottom. And I've got someone's handwritten notes, so hang in there for a sec.
Processing.
It was a very blur picture, but let's have a look.
Remind you to switch your phones to silent, but do keep them close by because we would like to encourage you to keep interacting with us on all the Vanguy social media platforms we are currently living. We are taking note.
And that's a bit of AI in action just to get you started, right? Handwritten notes from my mobile, reading it. You can scan a business card, it makes it digital, etc. So thank you so much for allowing me to do that short little demo there.
Thank you, Mr. Teba. That is quite interesting. We'd like to remind you that we are live on all social media platforms, so please do post your comments. We are noticing them.
Ladies and gentlemen, and we're on to our next topic, innovation and technology towards a globally sustainable aviation environment. And the presenter is Mr. Frans Hiemstra, head of partner channels for Uber Sub-Saharan Africa. Hello. He's still focusing and I'm not focused. and expand into new territories in sub-Saharan Africa. He's been with Uber since September 2015, previously worked as a management consultant. He still does. Distribution and the development sectors. He grew up in South Africa, studied at Stellenbosch. I would like to believe that he now has developed a taste for wine. Must be because he's a chartered accountant, and we know that red wine and accountants apparently go together. Is that correct? Okay. It's a very silent yes. Local businesses and the creation or facilitation. Thank you. His passion is in the creation and facilitation of opportunities for small businesses. If you're a South African, that should be music to your ears. And has been able to do this through his management consulting experience as well as working for Uber. And please welcome to the stage Mr. Frans Hiemstra.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? It seems like the sound is not great. Nobody can hear me yet. Okay, let's try here. It's on.
Could you please switch the mic on?
Let's move it up. Otherwise I can use a... Let me just use another mic. Hello? Can you hear me? I think that seems better. Okay. All right. Hi everybody. It's really nice to be here, and thank you for the intro. Where should I stand? This looks good. Thank you for the intro. Accountants and red wine, I suppose there is a little bit of truth in that. I do love wine, but off from that, I'm really happy to be here. I think it's important for me to maybe highlight a little bit of a personal story around aviation. I've always, and maybe probably since 14 years old, I've had a passion for aviation. I was one of those kids that would read every magazine about aviation that I can get my hands on. My father had to take me to Lanseria to go and sit and watch the aeroplanes take off and land, and that's all I could think about. And then I was lucky enough to pursue my PPL, and it was my passion coming alive, and it was something that I was super passionate about. And then I made a bit of a responsible choice, and I went to go and study, and then I did become a chartered accountant, and then the corporate world got in my way. And since then, I haven't really pursued my flying too actively, but it's great to see how I've come full circle, and then I can stand and talk to all of you here today in the aviation industry. And I think if I have to rewind to myself at 17 years old, I would have been really impressed with myself being able to speak to you guys about something that is actually extremely exciting. I'm here to talk to you about Uber Elevate, and Uber Elevate is one of Uber's next biggest bold bets, and I hope that you can resonate with it, as you all live in cities, or most of you would live in cities, and this is something that could potentially make your lives a lot easier. Now, when we started Uber, and I think maybe it's worth it to talk through where we started. In somewhere around 2009, our co-founders, Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, were in Paris at a conference, a tech conference, and it was snowing, and they were outside the conference at midnight, and they couldn't get home. They were stuck. They couldn't get a taxi, and they said to each other, imagine if I could take my phone out of my pocket and just click a button and just request a ride, and the next moment a car will come and fetch me. And that's essentially where the idea came. They went back to San Francisco, and a small group of tech people in the tech industry started carpooling together. And they put all their cars on this app, and the rest is history. And we started very small in San Francisco. We started as a premium product, a black car product. And if you see on the graph behind me, that's the, there we go. See on the graph, we saw that our growth was relatively impressive, and we noticed that people actually loved our service. They really started liking and using our service. We did realize that Uber doesn't work if it's just for the elite or just for people that can afford a black car. When I talk black car, it's the Uber Black for those of you that have used Uber before. It's a BMW, an Audi, or a Mercedes-Benz that comes and picks you up. But we realized that that's not the way that we're going to be able to scale and give access to the masses. Then we launched UberX, and you can see the exponential hockey stick curve that we saw there in the city. I think that's San Francisco's growth. And we really started reaching out to riders that now had access. I remember my first ride. I wasn't with the company, and I was just there in Sandton, and I was going out for drinks at a bar, and one of my friends said, there's this really cool app, you can just try, click a button, and after 5 minutes there'll be a car. And like magic, there was a black BMW outside my house to pick me up. Now, I don't know how many of you have had the experience of using Uber. I'm hoping most. There are nods and waves. Okay, thank you. I'm speaking to the converted. Anyway, so UberX was fantastic. We realized that riders love it, and they love it even more when they can afford it. We then started seeing a trend in our data. Now, picture, okay, where are we now? We're northern suburbs, Johannesburg. Potentially, you live in Fourways, and you have to head into Sandton every day. And we started seeing that you have people heading in the same direction, all in Ubers, but in separate cars, which is obviously not efficient. So that's where the light of Uber Pool started coming from. And Uber Pool is how we use our algorithm to match riders going in the same direction into the same car. So rather than requesting your own car, you can actually get into a car and share it with somebody else at a fraction of the cost. And what happens there is you see further exponential and incremental growth, because we have now created access for more people into the platform. So it's very exciting for us to see that growth, and I think it's very relevant when I talk to how we plan on building up Uber Elevate or Uber Air. Now, Uber has scaled. It's great for me to see that there's many people in the room that have actually used Uber, and over the last few years, we really have seen exponential growth. We've got 100 million riders that use our app every month. We're in 700 cities and 65 countries, and up until today, we've done 10 billion trips. Now, that's a lot of trips. That's a lot of riders. That's a lot of cities, and we have managed to do that by scaling in an economical and efficient way, and that's how we see we need to do the same with Uber Elevate. And I will get to exactly what Uber Elevate is in a bit. Now, we've previously spoken about living in cities. Now, today, I think about half of the world's population lives in cities, and the UN estimates that by 2050, more than 2/3 will live in cities. That's 6 billion people will live in cities. Now, some of you would have sat in traffic to get here today, and some of you might live in Lagos, some of you might live in Paris, some of you might live in Dubai, and have all experienced serious congestion. Lagos is one of my least favorite. It's a city that I really love, but I do dread having to go there and sit in the traffic for hours and hours just to get to my office. I'm heading to Nairobi next week, Monday, and I am holding my breath for how long it's going to take for me to get from the airport to my office. And that is why we have identified this need. And the need is for us to go from being in the grid to above the grid. And that is the crux of Uber Elevate. Uber has evolved over the years. We started with our black car service, then there was UberX, and now we've got autonomous cars. The picture that you see on the screen is our autonomous cars that are driving in the US. We've also started first and last mile electric bikes and scooters, which are doing really well in Europe, and at some point we'll eventually get to South Africa and to Africa. Another very exciting thing that we have done is we've realized that we have to integrate with existing public transport. It's not Uber or public transport, it's Uber and public transport. So in many cities, I think Denver was our first city, we've actually integrated with the trains. Imagine the Gautrain being on the Uber app, and you can book through the app, you can book a multimodal trip through the app. And that is where we're going. So transit is important, our vehicles on the ground are important, and first and last mile with our bikes and scooters is very, very important to us. Now, if we get back to cities, and it's interesting how probably in the 1920s you're seeing New York behind me. In the 1920s, the cities started getting congested. And how did we solve that? We went from being two-dimensional cities on the ground to being three-dimensional cities. We went up. And all that allowed, it unlocked a whole lot of extra capacity in cities. Now where you could only have 1 million people in the city, you can fit 4 million people in the city because we went up. And we went three-dimensional. And that is where we need to go with Uber Elevate. We need to go three-dimensional and move out of our two-dimensional transport landscape. It doesn't necessarily mean that the two-dimensional transport landscape is obsolete. It's a very, very key part of the success of Uber Elevate, and I will tell you a little bit more about that. So, in a nutshell, and how to show you in the most basic way how this will work. What you see on the screen behind me is a simulation of a trip in Los Angeles. The start trip is Los Angeles Airport, and the second point is a center. What do they call it? The Staples Center, and it's 16 miles, that's 25, almost 30 kilometers. And typically the journey takes an hour and 20 minutes to do on a normal day. On an Uber Elevate, that same trip will take you 27 minutes. Now imagine cutting your commute in 3. So that is where we try and do it, and it's all dependent on our electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that I'm about to show you. If I want to rewind a little bit to the multimodal platform that Uber has managed to develop, which is so critical to the success of Uber Elevate. We've got our jump bikes for first and last mile. We've got our integration with transit. We've got our cars, UberX, Uber Pool with increased utilization. And that's all needed to create an end-to-end transport experience for our riders. Now picture you live in, and let's use this example, you live in Dainfern. And your office is, you work for, who's in town? ABSA is in town. I think they're in town? Yes. ABSA's in town. And typically if you need to leave Dainfern to get to your office at 8 a.m. in the morning, you need to leave at like 6 a.m. to avoid is it 6 even earlier? Yeah. 2 hours, 1.5 hours to get there in traffic. Now picture this. You leave your house, you request your Uber. Uber picks you out at your door, takes you to the Skyport, and I'm going to tell you about a Skyport. Just outside Monte Cassino. You get into the Skyport, you go up. As part of the experience in the app, you get into one of our aircraft. It flies you within 10 minutes. You land in the CBD of Johannesburg. You walk out, go down the elevator, jump on a scooter that takes you the last 800 meters to your office. That is your end-to-end journey, and that is what is possible because we have these multi-modes on our platform. What you can see on the screen behind me is Rio de Janeiro. It's one of our big cities in Latin America. And what you see happening on the screen is those little dots are trips that happen on a typical morning. In the center, where you see the light, that's the city center. And that's typically how our Uber cities grow. It starts in the center. It will start in the Sandton, or it will start in the Cape Town CBD. And then slowly but surely expands out to, let's say, the Fourways or the Riversands or Midrand. And as it expands, it obviously creates access to the city center that the people that lived in the outlying areas might not have had. It's not perfect because you're still two-dimensional. You still need to request your car and sit in traffic for an hour and a half. But you now can do it in a shared ride. These cities that we have, these established cities that we have, and the 100 million riders that are using our platform every month are one of our biggest assets. And this asset we need to use to expand to the bigger cities that we have and the first cities that we want to pilot. And on the screen behind me, you will see a number of cities that we want to take this to. The one glaring thing that I don't like about that picture, there's nothing in Africa yet. And it doesn't that Africa is off the cards, but this is a very difficult thing for us to do right, and we need to do it right before we can expand to all our other cities. Sub-Saharan Africa is one of the key markets for Uber for our normal two-dimensional ride sharing. So it is on the map. If you take a Lagos can benefit from this more than most cities in Africa, so it's definitely on the cards. And this is something that we need to take to as many cities as possible, provided we can get the buy-in from everybody. We can't do this on our own. Now, the question you might be asking is, how do we actually do it? It looks really difficult to get this right. And I've started highlighting a few things that we've got in our favor. And one of those things is obviously our 100 million riders. And those 100 million riders are going to drive the demand to the product. But what they do give us is data. And the data is important for us to be able to design the system and create a simulation so that we can know how to do it before we actually do it. Can I grab a bottle of water? So that we know how to do it before we do it. And these simulations that we design are going to simulate the entire customer journey. So we know where people are coming from, we know where they are going, and we know how they like to move. Now, this is a critical input for us into designing the simulation. The simulation also feeds into how we're taking this above the ground. And how do we integrate with the air traffic control? I know that there are, well, this is an ATNS conference. There are definitely people from air traffic control here, and that's why it's so great to see that I was invited to talk here and being able to talk to you up front. We need to use the simulation, and we are able to use the simulation to see how we can integrate with existing air traffic. And an air traffic controller is going to shudder to think that there's going to be thousands and thousands of little aircraft flying above cities at 1,000 to 1,000 feet. The only way for us to make that possible is to work with air traffic control and actually build this network with air traffic control. How do we fit into general and commercial aviation, and how do we actually fit into the structures that exist, and how can we build the structures, the air traffic structures, so that we fit into it? And we have our models and our algorithms that we need to work to get this optimized. Now, I've spoken through a few things why we're so well positioned to do it. The first one is the multimodal transport layers that we have to integrate end-to-end, door-to-door transport with Uber Air. But something that I haven't spoken about yet is the aircraft. Now, that is something that I'm particularly excited about, and you'll see it come on the screen in a second. So the aircraft that we're looking at building, as I mentioned earlier, is an electronic vertical takeoff and landing craft. And we have started building this with partners, and I'll talk through it in a little bit more detail later. Another thing that I haven't gone into detail yet but alluded to is how are we going to actually take off and land these things? Where are we going to do it? We're going to do it with skyports, and we have a very clear strategy and have made a lot of progress on how we can get these skyports to be a reality. And then on the bottom left corner is our cloud systems, which need to integrate with existing air traffic control, and that system and that algorithm has to make sure that this can integrate with everything in a city. So if we look at the vehicle and really zoom in on that, we've got partners. We're not aircraft designers. We're not going to do it better than what existing operators are doing, and that is exactly why we've partnered with the best of the best. But for them to do their job well, we need to be very clear about what our mission is. And our high-level mission is to make transportation as reliable as running water, which is a very simple concept. But we needed to develop this mission to talk through, be able to articulate what is the speed that we want these crafts to travel at. What's the payload that they need to be able to manage? What's the range, and how do we actually power them? And the big thing is these are going to be electric. We need to know how quickly does this thing need to be charged. It can't take longer than 5 minutes to charge it if you're in peak hour. So we need to put that mission together, and that's exactly what we did. And that is allowing our partners to develop an absolutely tailor-made, perfect product for Elevate. Now, Elevator is not just about commercializing this. It's not about just building the aircraft and making this thing a reality. It's also about how we work with cities and communities and how we make these environmentally friendly. And from day one, we decided these need to be green. We decided they need to be electric from day one, which is actually, while it's a challenge, it is an opportunity. So we've got, part of the mandate is green. They have to be battery powered, which allows us the opportunity to make these craft a lot quieter. It's multiple rotors, which make us have the ability to really make these, and what's the number? I think 34 times less noisy than what a helicopter is. So that makes it possible, and we need to be good neighbors to our communities. Communities are important to us because our communities are actually our customers. We don't want them chasing us out because we're too noisy. We want them demanding our service. So that's why we need to make sure that we do everything to keep communities on board. The next thing is obviously safety. Now, as we have created access for people that traditionally didn't use an e-hailing service or even taxis for that matter, we needed to create something that is undoubtedly safe. And it needs to be a perception of safety, and it needs to be really safe. And from the onset, safety has been a prime priority for us in the design of the aircraft, in the thinking through the air traffic control on the skyports. Everything has been, safety has been our primary North Star that we need to and cannot ever compromise on. Now, I mentioned our partners. Now, you'll see names up here. We started with Embraer, we've got Bell, we've got Boeing, Pipistrel. We've got a number of aircraft manufacturers that partnered with us from the beginning. And what's beautiful is they've bought into the concept and are type designing exactly for us. They've been extremely collaborative. They've been working with our designers to build the products that we need. So they are critical to build the aircraft that we have. The next thing is, how do we manage the skyports? How do we think through making sure that the traffic flows is managed carefully? And that's how we use our data again. We use the data to know where people are traveling to so that we can pinpoint exactly where we need to put our skyports. And we have chosen specific cities and already mapped out. You see Dallas over there. Every single dot that you see is a skyport. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but we know exactly already to the building where these skyports need to be put. When we started, we had a very basic concept. It needs to be a retrofit takeoff and landing space, potentially retrofitted on top of a parking garage, and that's where we started. But that's not good enough to realize our launch goals of 2023. By 2023, we need to have put together what you're seeing on the screen behind me, and that is the concepts that we've put together with major architect firms globally and how they have started throwing ideas around and really designing skyports that integrate with cities. You'll notice they have to have clear links to ground transportation. Some of these skyport ideas are even on top of a highway so that there's easy on and off ramp from ground transportation to make this multimodal journey happen as quick as possible. However, if we want to go to the next level, past 2023, we need to get bigger than that. We need to get to in excess of 1,000 landings an hour, and this is what you're seeing behind me. These are the mega skyports, and they can handle between 1,000 and 1,500 landings an hour in peak time. It looks like it's space technology, but this is what we need to do to make this work. So if I can take you a little bit back to when I started, where we had Uber Black and we had Uber X and then we had Pool, we need to make sure this thing can work. And it's expensive. Imagine what the infrastructure investment is, the investment and development of the aircraft. And our easiest proxy is helicopter travel. Now, we don't see thousands of helicopters flying across the city, moving people across, because it's just prohibitively expensive. Now, for us to get this right, and our first step is bringing costs down through our quiet and electric vehicles. That's going to shave a third of the cost off. And on a per kilometer basis, that's about the same as an Uber Black. So we're not there yet. We have to be better, and that's the near term. After that, we need to bring this cost down even more. And that we do through driving up utilization and making sure that this product is pooled. You can't have one person flying in one of these craft, you need to have 4 people full. And this payload efficiency is going to drive the cost down closer to an Uber X price. That's still not good enough. The next step has to be getting it down and pushing costs even further down to start competing with owning your own car. And the only way we can do that is through autonomous flying, which we're already working on the ground. So autonomous flying, and 2, we need to get the manufacturing efficiencies the same level as automotive manufacturing. And we feel that is possible. And that's going to get us to a point where when you need to decide in the morning how you're driving into work, are you going to drive in your car and pay X, or are you going to take an Uber and pay X minus 20% or whatever that number is? We need to get you there, and that's what gets us really excited. Now, we have regulators, I'm sure, in the room, and we realized from the get-go we need to be very close to regulators. This is a very, very tightly controlled space, and without getting them on board from day one, it's not going to work. So we've already got we've got the FAA, Department of Transport. All of them have been on board from the beginning. They actually had keynote speeches at our Elevate Summit in June in Washington, and that's the only way we're going to do it. Make no mistake, we will not make this work in an environment where we do not have friendly regulations to this. So it's important for us to do it, and that is also a way in which we choose the cities to go to next. We definitely would love to be everywhere, but we need to go where we have smart regulations that can make this innovation work. A specific city is Dallas. Now, I showed Dallas earlier. Dallas has really proved, and with a small group of forward-thinking regulators, they have managed to put themselves on the map and really start driving the regulation in advance of us even launching. And as a result, we have focused on Dallas, and it's going to be one of our first cities. They've even created an innovation zone outside the city where we're going to do our first test flights, where we're going to demonstrate the product, and that's where we need to start. And it's fantastic to see these cities getting on board so that they can showcase to other cities, to Johannesburg, to Lagos, to Delhi, to Sydney. All of these cities need to learn from here and actually get on board. Now, I've taken you through the journey of Uber, and a very important thing is our multimodal options that we have, from jump bikes to transit to UberX to Uber Pool. But our biggest and our boldest bet is Uber Air. And we hope by bringing this first to the US and then to the rest of the world, 2020 first test flights, 2023 commercial operation, that we're going to have thousands and thousands of little aircraft flying above our cities, moving people into cities, across cities, and making urban mobility really work, and actually making cities smaller. You can live far outside of town and manage to commute into work. So that is what our vision is, and that is what we are working to achieve. I have one video to show you at the end, and it's just a little sample of how we can expect to see a simulation of what you can expect when we actually launch this. Let's go. There we go. Apologies for the awkward silence. The audio doesn't seem to be working. But what you see is good enough. You don't need to hear the audio. And that's coming into one of our mega skyports. Vertical landing. And there, your journey's done. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hinstra. Please stay on stage. We're opening up the floor for a few questions, please. We are aware that he's not on the app, so you weren't able to post your questions. Can we have the mic going around? Does anyone have questions? Look, we have air traffic controllers in the crowd, so I'm sure they have a lot to say about it. I can just imagine what they're thinking with all the traffic in their airspace. Hi, sir. Could you please say your name and your question, please?
Hi, my name is Kenny. I work in ground handling. So, of course, my question is related to the loading of the aircraft. It's not specific as to how much baggage or kilograms of cargo or bags it's going to take, and are you allowed to take long trips to Cape Town, or is it just city to city where you have a small luggage? Thank you.
Yes, so it's intercity. So it's not intercity; it's within the city. So you can take a carry-on bag, a laptop bag, or a little tog bag. That's how we've worked out our payload for the craft. So it's definitely not Johannesburg to Cape Town.
Thank you. Mr. Sam Twala, and one last question. Okay, we'll take you.
Thank you for that nice and interesting presentation. One quick question. If you look at EASA, in terms of certification for this type of aircraft, they say it has to meet similar standards as like an airliner, right? CS25, 25. Now the question is, how is this going to be affordable for 3-4 passengers if it has to meet the similar certification standard as an airliner which has 300 passengers?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is, so actually fantastic question. I don't have all the detail on it, but what I can tell you is it needs to be certified by the right regulations, and these regulations are being drafted in the US, and these are going to be example regulations. We need to make it work. It needs to be feasible for this to work, but it needs to be certified at a cost that can work. So I don't know exactly what certification it will require, but we will need to meet the requirements of the countries that we operate in, and at the same time we need to work with them to get the right regulations before we just plug into existing regulations. So it can't work if the regulatory costs are prohibitive. It's got to work. It's got to work for this.
I want just to find out if those aeroplanes will have pilots.
Yes. Initially, we will definitely have pilots, and obviously be specifically trained to operate on these aircraft. Down the line, we will have to move to autonomous.
And on the ground, you will have scooters. Those scooters also need people to drive them.
Sorry, say again?
The scooters on the ground.
No, so the great thing about the scooters is you drive them yourselves. So imagine it's like a bicycle. You get there, you just click, and it's not necessarily relevant to all cities. I probably wouldn't have bicycles outside this conference center, but picture in London or Paris, there'll be a bicycle that you get on, and it's an electric bicycle or a scooter that you stand on. But you'll be driving yourself.
And now, if you have to pay pilots, how is it going to be cheaper than the normal transport?
So we need to make the economics work. I think the big thing is our high utilization. It's not going to be these craft need to be operating all the time, and we need to scale to a point where the economies of scale make it work. We need to pay pilots what pilots need to be paid, and the entire value chain needs to be optimized so that we can make it work.
Thank you. Here's the last one down here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I heard you say something about by 2023 should be operational. That's about 4 years, within the next 4 years. Now, given the layout of the current cities as they are, the buildings that are there, obviously there's going to have to be a lot of re-engineering the top size of the buildings, the different levels. Are you envisaging that maybe in the nearer future, when buildings are erected, maybe this should be accommodated, whereby already these Uber pods or helipods are going to be already in place? Or how do you see?
Yeah.
Is there going to be an Uber city or something like that?
So I think it's a really good question. It's sometimes a little bit hard to imagine before we've actually seen it. Those skyports that I showed you earlier, we need to start with something retrofit, something that can fit on it can be on the roof of this. That needs to be our first layer, and then the other skyports need to be built in areas where air traffic can actually come in and out easily. The reality is they are going to be flying in busy cities. These are going to be flying over big, massive, congested cities, and they're going to have to land on buildings in the city. So,
which is my next question,
yes.
Because there's going to have to be low-level flying, and just for disaster management, because at the moment there's also a nightmare if there's an air crash. Now, in a congested city, if one of these should crash, which I think regulations are going to have to be. I don't know how are you looking forward to sorting that one out?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have a solid answer on you. I don't have the answer myself, but I know it would have been answered in the US where they're actually working with the cities on it. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to pass on that question. I don't have a direct enough answer to give you there. But it's a very good and a very obvious question to ask. And because of the nature of the question, we figuring it out or figured it out already. Sorry for not being more direct.
That last question came from our ATNS board member, Mr. Ngema. General, my apologies, General Ngema. I'd like to call up please don't go, sorry, please do not go. I'd like to call out ATNS CIO, Ms. Veronica Sabona, and the Aviation Training Academy Principal, Tendani Ndo, to present our speakers with gifts. Thank you so much. Your presentation literally took us to the future. May I also ask Mr. Teba to come up, as well as Mr. Twala. These gifts are just a token of our appreciation to say thank you so much for coming and discussing your topics with us. Go ahead. One will give you the gift, the other will share.
Thanks. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks. All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd just like to remind you that we are live currently on all social media platforms. Next, I'd like to call up Dr. Palesa Mothapo. Dr. Palesa Mothapo will present the topic of the aviation impact on Gen Y. She is the head of postdoctoral research support at Stellenbosch University, Division for Research and Development. Palesa holds a PhD degree in zoology and has completed her BSc honors and master's degree cum laude. She is an alumnus of the Green Matter WWF Nedbank Green Trust Emerging Leaders and was on the 2014 Mail and Guardian 200 Young South Africans list. She's a lifetime member of the Golden Key International Honor Society and a 2018 Mandela Washington Fellow. May we give a warm welcome to Dr. Mothapo. We are looking for the pointer. Has someone taken it? Mr. Hinstra? So, Palesa, what do you think of what was presented about Uber and the future?
Yeah.
That looks like it's right here at our doorstep. 2023, 24.
Yeah, it's right next door. I don't have the whips and whistles in my presentation, so I have to top that somehow. But it's very exciting to see the future happen. Yeah.
It is very exciting. Have you found it, Jaco? Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. I don't have the fabulous video from Uber, and I don't have futuristic stuff to show you, but I'm also feeling a bit of an imposter syndrome to be here with all the aviation people, and I'll show you why. How do I move it? I'm not sure where to point.
Could someone please come down to help us with the pointer? Okay. Yeah, it's still not doing anything. In the meantime, we'd just like to announce that 2 USBs have gone missing from the exhibition stands. If anyone has taken them by mistake, could you kindly bring them back? There is also a lost and found section at the reception area if you have lost anything. Thank you.
Okay, technical problem.
Okay, there's a technical problem. In the meantime, can maybe you see some of the tweets that have been posted by the delegates? All right, and we have Ngelosi, Head of Partner Channels for Uber Sub-Saharan Africa, Mr. Franz Himstra, presenting the electrical aircraft that will be used for Uber Air, which is an incredible concept designed at addressing how we can make transportation three-dimensional. I think the subject, it was a very good one, and I can't wait to see it materialize. Will 3D holographic projection change the face of teaching? I do know that this question wasn't answered, but if you have any questions for a specific speaker, please do see them during the lunch. We will have a networking session there. Text, are we sorted? All right. Mr. Adnan Teba. Sorry about that. All right. Please scroll down, thank you. Hashtag AVIAFRIQUE 2019, Uber Air, interesting times ahead. Definitely. I'd actually like to find out if any of the air traffic controllers have any comments regarding it. Anne, Leila, I see you guys. Do you want to say something? Do you have something to say? Could someone please get a mic to Leila? I don't know all the air traffic controllers, but I know you're here. So if you have comments, guys, please.
Hi, everybody. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, I'm not an air traffic controller. I come from a history of an air traffic service officer, and now I'm an AIM. So two things just came to my mind. The first one being, we've got a lot of planning of airspace. So maybe the idea of increasing our flight information services is a good one. And another thing is I can see the future of AIM in this. Because at the end of the day, if every aircraft had to file a flight plan from the Uber Air, that would be a nightmare. But there are solutions. And I think ATNS, this is something ATNS will wholeheartedly embrace.
And I think this is what it's about: innovation, innovation, innovation. The technologies are bound to disrupt us, but we need them to improve. May we please take the mic to Mr. Henny Murray, who can give us his views on Uber. Putting him on the spot there.
Interesting. The thoughts I had was that we will need to integrate Uber Air into traffic. That's one. That you can do with vertical splits. And in some geofencing, I would imagine. But how are you going to get those aircraft, because that's what they are, in and out of all those ports or sky ports? The benefit of Uber Air is that the straight line is the shortest way to go. But to get them all in and out, you're going to have to get organized. So you'll have to do some form of standardized in and outbound routes for the sky ports, especially when they get busier. In the beginning, it's probably easy. You can all go direct and talk to each other. But eventually, some of the benefit will be lost because we'll have to go back to almost what we have now in SIDS and STARS into airports. Not to that extent, but to move 1,000 aeroplanes an hour in and out of those sky ports, you'll have to have some form of standardized routings in and out. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a lot of talking and a lot of inefficiencies happening around that port. So how we do that's going to be interesting. And I don't know where the FAA is with this. It'll be interesting to see what they are thinking and then how we evolve that whole concept to almost do an aviation system where it runs between big skyscrapers in a city and not losing the efficiency by becoming over-restrictive on routings.
Thank you, Mr. Maria. It seems like this industry is going faster than what the regulations are. Thank you so much for your comments. Are you ready for us, Dr. Matapo?
I think so.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now it's working. All right, so I was saying earlier that I have serious imposter syndrome, standing here with all you aviation people, and I'm an entomologist. I spent my whole academic career working on ants, studying ant behavior, communication systems, which are quite applicable in your environment, but I'm not going to talk about that today. If you want to know, you can ask me afterwards. What I will tell you, here's a quick fun fact. I read a paper, it was actually yesterday, I put this slide in yesterday, about how dragonfly wings could inspire new aeroplane flight controls. And dragonflies have very unique wings with a lot of neurons on them, and each wing is, it can act responsively to environmental changes. So these researchers at the Imperial College of London are kind of trying to be futuristic like Uber to see how they can improve their aeroplane wing so that it can respond to environmental change. Okay. But perhaps the reason that I'm standing here today is this program that I started at Stellenbosch University called Academic Innovation. And I started the program because I moved from an academic environment into research management, mainly because of the challenge of this thing called unemployment, and especially unemployment of graduates, highly skilled individuals with masters and PhDs not getting jobs in the country. But the challenge of that was we are basically creating job seekers and not job creators. And this program, the idea behind it is to inspire innovation from all research sectors, especially within university environments, through partnerships with industry and working with society to solve problems. The idea of solving a problem is where innovation actually happens. Because you see a need and you try to fill it with some new idea. It can be technology, it can be a new process that you change. There's lots of different ways. The focus of the program is to make sure that we put graduates in companies or government departments where they can be immersed. Where they can be immersed in the environment. When you're at a university, as you know, the lecturers stand here in front like me, and I'm telling you something that I think that you should know because I believe in it, and then you must believe in it. And I do things a specific way, and I'm training you to do them the same way that I'm doing. And through this program, we want to challenge that way of thinking. Creating graduates that always are creative thinkers, challenging the status quo. The idea also is that there will be a skills transfer from academia to industry and vice versa. This is because when you leave university with a PhD, you come out there knowing everything about your thesis and nothing else. And then we're going to celebrate you and say, Dr. Mutapo, you're so great. But Dr. Mutapo specializes on ants only. And am I useful in your work environment? How am I going to apply that knowledge to solve society's challenges? When you hire me in your company, how am I going to ensure that you generate more revenue, market presence, sustainability? How will I do that if I don't know how to fit in an industry environment? So the topic says the impact of Gen Y, the impact of aviation on Gen Y in Africa. And I was like, oh, I'm not aviation, I don't know so much. You know, I was telling everybody this past 2 days that it's so great to see all the diverse carriers. And all we know is the pilot and the cabin crew and nothing else. Maybe I might know about the engineer from watching air crash investigation. But most of the time, we don't know anything about you and the careers that you do. And maybe it's time that you start communicating that, showing people the different careers that are available in aviation. So I took a different route and did the research way. I took the academic route in trying to kind of express what I understand about the impact of aviation on Gen Y. And it was good that I get to talk about Gen Y because I am a Gen Y myself. And we are risk takers and opportunity fetchers, and we have an insatiable curiosity. And for me, I felt all those descriptors are a perfect fit for me. And I guess this is why I ended up here as well. So, as I was doing some Google search and Scopus and Web of Science, I came across this article, in fact, 2 of them, same author. So, and I found this picture of the different airports and their connections, about 3,200. What struck me was how empty it is here. And I wondered, what is happening? We are supposed to be growing as Africa, as a continent. We are supposed to be a developing economy. What is happening here? And then when I read, it said, oh, we only actually have 1%, which is too little, of the global market. And you can correct me. And in this 2010 paper, this author also said, in the next 20 years, we should expect about 6% growth in air traffic transport over the next 20 years. But we know there's a big problem with infrastructure on the continent and challenges with visas. These 2 factors influence how we do business, and they influence our economy, and they influence opportunities for job creation. So we need to start thinking about doing something different, because young people want to do something different. And then I went to Stats SA to look at their recent tourism report, 2018, because I was struggling to find information about young people in aviation. And basically, this information is about the number of travelers that are coming to the country and leaving the country. So all travelers, international travelers, and South Africans. But you can see the number leaving and coming is just the same, stays the same, but some small differences here for the international travelers. So what are we doing? Are we not leaving? Are we not engaging? Most of the travelers are coming for holiday. We wish to have them coming for business. And them coming for business means something is happening in the country. So we need to be thinking about what opportunities we create there. Oh, apologies. Okay, so in the SADC countries, these are a number of countries that are visiting South Africa, and mainly from Zimbabwe, and the rest of Africa mainly from Nigeria. Again, when you look at the tourists coming in by region and the reason of their visit, so from other African countries, the main leaders there are Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, and Ethiopia. But again, very little of the visitors are coming to do business, mainly for holiday purposes. Oops. Okay, so then I looked at the age distribution and who is coming in the country. The majority that are coming here are in the category Gen Y, okay? And these are young people moving around, looking for different opportunities, bringing new knowledge, bringing new skills, bringing innovation and technologies, but still, as we saw in the past graph, mainly for holiday. So what can we do to incentivize? What role can the aviation industry play to incentivize more business among these young people? Okay. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. The Gen Y really are people who are the first of everything, the first to have a proper computer, laptop, smartphones, traveling the world, trying new things. So very adventurous individual. They're also very technology savvy. So this is very small writing now, but they're using a lot of the technology. So this is a report from Deloitte, and basically they surveyed young people within the Gen Y generation and asked, what is it that they want? What do they want? The bottom line is they want to make money. We all want to make money. They want to create jobs. But I was curious about was what jobs they want to create. And then I continued looking for information. In this graph is a report from Statista 2018 that shows the airline expenditure worldwide from 2015 to 2035 by generation. So you can see we are going to 2020 in 2 months, but you can see later on that the most expenses will come from the millennials, which are the Gen Y. So we're hoping that as they're spending money for travel, that it's going to be for business and to create networks on the continent. So in this graph, just shows the 2 areas where opportunities are available on the continent, and mainly in Nigeria, Angola, South Africa, and Ghana. And mainly retail, and ITC. So technology is going to boom, and there's going to be a lot of expenditure on that. But then this really was a very curious statistic for me. Like, we have so many shopping malls. So what are we supposed to do with shopping malls? And what is in the shopping malls? What are we buying? Is it African owned? What are we doing with the materials that are there in the shopping malls? So, since it was very difficult to come up with information pertaining aviation specifically for Gen Y, I went to look at what role aviation can play in reaching some of these sustainable development goals. And these are important because they inform our practices in the future. We are also living in an era where we need to start focusing on jobs and economies that don't exist yet. And we need to build the skills and capacities to be ready for those jobs and economies when they do come. Help. Okay, so I'm going to skip this slide because I go through. I actually selected some that I thought could apply to the aviation industry. And since we're going to have a quick panel after this, I do pose a few questions in the next slides to maybe that we can address when we're in the panel. Okay, thanks. Okay, so the first one I selected was good health and well-being. So we know that more effort is needed to eradicate diseases and to address emerging and persistent health in Africa. So how could innovations in aviation improve health and well-being? So outside at the exhibitions, I saw some drones, I saw some hydrogen-powered unmanned crafts for spraying insects and so on. So interesting innovations that could apply here. Affordable clean energy. So we know that energy is important. It's a big contributor to climate change and to greenhouse emissions. So how could innovations here in aviation reduce impacts on the environment? Do we need to use fuel? And what types of fuels do we need? There's biofuels and other options. And how are those applied within the aviation industry? Decent work and economic growth. I mentioned in my very first slide about unemployment. It's a huge challenge, and we need skills for economics that don't exist yet. So what roles in the aviation industry does it foresee in contributing to job creation, innovation, or readiness for these markets? Okay. Apologies. Okay, and industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So the inadequate infrastructure is a big barrier for access, actually, to job access, markets, information, education. It's restrictive to healthcare and education, and it can potentially stall the economy. So what could you do as the aviation industry? And how do we improve the market access for the Gen Y? Like, I personally have a problem with the visa issues, but it's most likely not to do with aviation, but it's one of the challenges that needs to be addressed. And number 17 is partnerships for goals. A successful sustainable development agenda requires partnerships between governments, academia, private industry, and civil society. On Wednesday evening, the CEO mentioned the importance of research and development. And I felt really strongly that that was so important to partner, especially within academia. Universities sit with a lot of knowledge, and they create a lot of knowledge, and they don't know how to apply it. But if you work with them as an industry, you are able to take what you know can be used and create these innovations that are required. Okay, so that is the end. My thank you is not there, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mutapo. Appreciate it. So first question here, are you a job seeker or a job creator? Or which one would you like to be? I just want to confirm, just a second, sorry. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would join me in thanking Dr. Muthapu, and then we're going to go right into a panel discussion before we go into lunch. So the questions will be handled there. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, last session for the day, ladies and gents. And as mentioned, that will be a panel discussion. I would like to introduce Ms. Prudence Mabitsela. She's Managing Director and co-founder of Dynamic DNA. It's a learnership training academy in South Africa. Specializes in empowering young dynamic people to become technology leaders of tomorrow. She serves as a board member as well as a director of the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, its Women Entrepreneur Center. And she believes that change can be done through changing one person at a time. I'm going to add to that, one Uber at a time. She's currently campaigning to drive more females into the ICT industry using the Fourth Industrial Revolution for her platform. And in 2019, her business was nominated for the Business of the Year Award, and she has been nominated for the Young Executive of the Year Award as well. Congratulations, ma'am. So I would like to hand over to Ms. Mabitsela, and she will handle our last panel discussion then before we close for the day. Thank you.
Flight AV211 is about to land very shortly. I just had to say that. Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for having us. So I'd like to welcome the panelists to come through. And we have an interesting topic to cover. Our topic is around the Generation Y and how it impacts on Africa altogether. But I don't want the panelists to be limited to just the Gen Y generation. I want them to also touch on the Gen Z generation, which are our kids at the moment, and how that actually impacts them. Please come through, ladies. Lebu, Zarif. Dr. Palesa. All ladies. I'm empowered for sure. So I think the past 2 days, we've seen a lot of men being seated at the panelists' discussions, as well as a lot of men that have been standing here speaking in front of us. And this is truly empowering to be seeing females within the aviation industry, females that are leaders within the industries that they are part of, seated here at the moment. Please introduce yourselves, ladies.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lebo Khan Letsoalo. I'm the CEO for the company called SingPoint, which focuses on optimization in supply chain. And one of the roles that I play in the industry is as a mentor and a coach in the logistics industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. The one thing that brought me here was the fact that I'm actually an air traffic controller for ATNS, and the topic is with regards to my age group and my industry that I'm in. So that's who I am.
Hello, everyone. I just met you. I'm Palesa Muthapu. I am the head postdoctoral research support at Stellenbosch University. In my portfolio, I focus on capacity development for researchers who are high-skilled, so they have PhDs, or they are early career researchers within the academic environment, and I do industry engagements.
So since there's just the four of us, right? I think we're just going to enjoy this one because we are standing in front of people's stomachs. After this, the actual event ends and we have to all go and start eating. So let's try and ensure that this is an exciting aspect of the event and we end it off on a bang, ladies. So one thing that I want to ask you ladies is, how do we think we have enough opportunities that we are giving out there to the youth of the country, specifically the Gen Y generation?
You're asking for the opportunities, right? If they're sufficient. They are. I don't want to lie, there's a whole lot of opportunities, more especially with regards to the aviation industry. There are many areas that can be explored. Our only problem then only becomes exposure. The opportunities exist, but people don't know about them. So we can provide all the facilities that are required for us to be able to teach people, for us to give practical exercises that are done, and all of the training and the curriculum can be put in place. But if people don't know that such opportunities exist, then there's nothing we can do with all those resources that we've made available. So we need to keep up with how we inform the generations that are following us, especially since we were the first generation to actually take or rather start using the laptop, start using the phone. We should be the ones that are connecting the baby boomers with the Generation Zs so that we are able to focus on how we'll be letting each other know about the opportunities that exist for everybody and be able to expand more. And given that Africa is so limited with regards to infrastructure and our resources, it is only benefiting that we share as much as we can.
Yeah, sharing as much as we can. I like that. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, I believe that a lot of opportunities exist in the industry. I will say both on the entrepreneurship perspective and also within corporates. Let me start a bit on corporate. We are aware that there's already a whole lot of initiatives that happens with the empowerment, but I believe that the biggest challenge that exists is really around the capacity that comes with it and the skills that comes with it. If you look at the generation that we are talking about, a lot of skills sits with older people. So for those, the Generation Z or Y, whichever we're speaking about, for them to be able to get those opportunities, they need access to mentorship and opportunities around that. So the opportunity is there, but the other part of it is really around what skills are necessary, what skills exist within that environment. So you may find that such employees are not able to access or be able to achieve what they require. So let's talk about entrepreneurship. Aviation is part of the transport sector. The transport sector on its own has got transport sector codes, and in entrepreneurship, as much as they haven't been promulgated, there is a lot of work that needs to happen. If you look at the transport sector codes and really the percentages that has been put there as part of KPIs and what needs to be achieved for the youth, it tells you already that from the business perspective, a lot can be done and access can be given to the youth or Generation Z and so forth to be able to be part of the business environment. Thank you.
So I have a follow-up question, right? There are opportunities is what you ladies have mentioned, and I agree 100%. And aviation is like the same as the industry that I'm in, IT. And the opportunities are there, but the skill is not there. There's a lot of scarce skills that are within the market. How do we ensure that we close that skills gap, especially for the youth that are marginalized? So these are people that are disabled. These are people that come from rural areas. These are people from the townships. How do we bring them closer?
Okay. Coming from an academic environment, it's all a matter of access. So you need to provide funding. You need to provide funding for those scarce skills, like in aviation, where you don't get a lot of people coming into it. And improve how people can learn. So it's very difficult to get someone from a remote area and try to bring them into a university that's very far away. It's cost, they have to live there. It's just an extra cost. So that's why it's very difficult for people or young people to get to university if they don't have adequate resources. So I feel that there is a need to improve their access, maybe use technology, maybe have mobile classrooms, instead of having to travel to a UCT or a Stellenbosch. You can go to a communal hall or some place where the classes can be streamed and you can log in that way, do distant learning, but you still have access to that knowledge that you require in order to build your skills.
In the perfect world, I agree. So this is going to be very interactive. Eh? In a perfect world, I agree. We can say we can put up halls, but do they have access to internet? Do they have, access to skilled people within the rural areas? How are we going to ensure that that barrier is actually closed?
Yeah, so that's there. We have to take responsibility. If you are in a position of privilege, you are the one who has to take much of the responsibility to reach out and make sure that the resources do get to those people. I want to give an example with registration for university. Stellenbosch is a small town, but there is a township right next door. And I was quite appalled to discover that most of the black students that come to the university don't come from Stellenbosch, they don't come from Kayamandi, which is a township right next door to the university. In fact, it should be like 90% of the black students at the university should be coming from Kayamandi. But when I actually went there, I realized, they can't apply for the registration. They don't have the money to apply for the registration. You need internet to be able to sign up online, but the university has the resources. So instead of going out and maybe having a mobile, those containers, and getting a service provider like Cell-C, Telkom, have laptops in there, and get the kids to come in and get students to volunteer and help the students apply. So that thing is like an action. But nobody's taking the responsibility to do something like that, even though it's from a position of privilege. So the responsibility should come from there as well.
Prudence, my colleague or friend that I've recently made speaks from the academic side of things. To answer it from the social side of things, I'd like to add that I'm going to keep it within the aviation realm of things. Aviation realm of things is, unfortunately at the moment, we are all departments within the industry that are working in silos. We've got ATNS that stands on its own, we've got SAA that stands on its own. We all fall under the Department of Transport, as Lebo and them would also fall under the Department of Transport with logistics. But the unfortunate thing is, ATNS has its initiative to expose its career limits. SAA has its ways, but if we were to be able to be brought together, more especially what the minister was saying yesterday, to say if we can all work together to be able to work towards one aviation industry, the same as the rest of the country is doing, then we'd be able to work on something better. Each individual company is doing something, not to speak on behalf of my company in a marketing manner, but yes, ATNS is doing things such as they go out to the public, they take the simulators because they understand that not everybody has access to internet, not everybody has access to cell phones, not everybody has smartphones. And the mere fact that there are children that are sitting waiting for their grade 12 results, not knowing what their future looks like, they go and they tackle it in a manner that we are going to schools, we're going to make it fun, we're going to tackle the grade 8s before they even choose their subject matters, for them to be able to get an understanding of when they make a decision in life, grade 10, then they at least know what are the possibilities out there. So there are initiatives. The best thing to be done is to be brought together and have your, with what Dr. Palisa is saying, take it to the people. The privileged and the underprivileged should be given the same opportunity, and that is exactly what the aviation companies are doing. And they are opening all of that opportunity for everybody that is out there. by making sure that you don't have to use your resources to get it. We will use what we have. We will use the AVIAFRIQUE. We will call all the departments that are available. They will know that we are a company that can come to you and bring the information to you. But if that can be done in a more of a collective manner, then we can be able to achieve and penetrate the whole silo system, and also penetrate the fact that there are people with limited resources that cannot get access to information that we have.
Thank you very much. Lebo, just a quick question.
This is a very heavily loaded question, Prudence. I would like to respond looking at various areas, and one is around the issue that you touched around scarce skills. We must always remember as industry that scarce skills are always identified by industry. You know, for some of the people that understand the workforce skills planning process, they will really understand that through that process, corporates have to identify the critical skills and the scarce skills that are needed for corporates, and it goes through via the higher education space. It goes through to the SETAs, which speaks obviously to our industry. In case of aviation, we're speaking with the transport SETA in South Africa. So it's very important that if we really want to tackle scarce skills, we do not take this process as just a tick box exercise. It must be a proper exercise that is done by industry to ensure that when some of these scarce skills are identified, because you remember that the SETAs, the way they work, they in fact look at what industry has identified. So the focus in terms of the training has to be aligned exactly with that. That's the first one. The second thing that we must also remember is that in terms of academia, if you are in universities, university will never teach you to be in a specific sector. We all coming from different sectors, but still within the transport sector itself. And you know, that obviously puts some pressure on the corporates to ensure that a certain level of mentorship happen, certain level of coaching happens, certain level of access on the site visits is already given to students at the university level. The third part for me is really around collaboration in the industry. So we should not even place this whole thing on either a corporate or a government sector. Industry requires an integrated, collaborative approach where you look at professionals, academia, corporates, and so forth coming together to be able to deal with the pandemic that we have. And really around ensuring that when students are still at universities, they are being able to be given access into the industry so that there's those workplace readiness programs, and that you are able to take it further to the rural areas. And because what has been raised here in terms of social issues is the critical area, because in the urban areas, just about anyone has got access to information. Go to the rural areas, that is where we have a bigger challenge. And the question is, how do we give access to just about any child? How do we create hope for just about any child that's seated in the rural areas? Thank you.
So, another question. Does this work? Everyone able? So, we all know, Generation Y, a lot of them, if you've seen the stats, a lot of them are unemployed. A lot of them have lost hope. A lot of them are not dreaming anymore. We've seen earlier on from France's presentation that, you know, there's disruptive technologies that are taking over, emerging technologies like AI, what we've seen earlier on from Microsoft, but we've also seen that there's Uber Air that is coming along, right? How do we see this playing out practically in Umtata as an example? Do you think the child or the youth that's there, they'll start dreaming beyond, or how will this affect them, the Gen Y at Umtata, seeing an Uber Air?
Prudence, they're already thinking that, and I am really sure that there are many of our generations, many of our individuals across the many generations that have thought of that idea, but obviously, you know, limitations with regards to who to pitch it to. But there's a very high number of pilots, South African young pilots, or student pilots that are in flight schools that are training, there's a high number of students that are flying in, being sent in by the different governments from different countries to come and practice or be pilots, because there's a certain quality of service that we do provide in South Africa that actually benefits the entire country, be it through piloting, be it through air traffic control, and any other resource that we are able to provide. They're dreaming about it already, and it's just a matter of it getting to them. And if they see something that is an opportunity such as Uber Air, that won't be limiting them the same way that there are other regulations that say you must have this for you to be able to get that, and you cannot get funding for it because you are either unable to access the funding because you don't know about it, or you genuinely don't meet the criteria. Such opportunities such as the Uber Eats and the Uber Elevate and the drones are going to be able to broaden the minds of the young South Africans so that they are able to actually think in another dimension, in another angle that says, I don't have to be sitting inside the aircraft for me to be doing what I'm doing. And then it also opens opportunity for them to say, if I'm an air traffic controller and I start thinking about it in a manner that there'll be unmanned aerial vehicles that will be flying, at least I can now think up of another innovative idea that will assist the air traffic controller. So it basically broadens the aviation understanding, and it broadens whatever it is. And with them sitting Mthatha in a new airport that has been opened, and they identify the little challenges that that airport has, and they have people that they can be able to communicate with, or a government that supports their idea of bringing a new innovation into how they can improve Mthatha. They start out small. Next thing, they'll be working at OR Tambo at the behind the scenes, and not being the air traffic controller, but being the engineer that actually says, I got exposed through talking to the government who brought this to me. But again, it goes back to alignment. If we, if our government and ourselves are talking the same language as an industry, then those questions should answer themselves as soon as they are faced with them as kids.
Because I'm trying to think of it. I'm that child who's 25, no longer a child, obviously, at that point. I'm 25 years old. I'm living in Mthatha. I've been unemployed for a long period of time. And now I have been dreaming about this, because Gen Y, Gen Z, they think very differently than anyone else. And there's this part of it that comes into play, which is Uber Elevate. And it brings upon a different way of thinking now. People start over dreaming now. Now they think outside of dreaming, and now it's a reality, And probably at that point, I start thinking, I can do it. You start seeing opportunities around you. You start thinking, I can possibly become another entrepreneur, another competitor for Uber Elevate. Debo?
I believe one of the things that we need to do is we need to take incubation to the next level, to the rural areas. Incubation currently is within cities. If you look at incubation hubs that exist, they are within the cities. So we need to empower people in rural areas within those environments. There's a lot of funding that is happening with the cooperatives. Those cooperatives need to be empowered so that they can empower people within the rural areas. And the focus of the incubation hubs will obviously within around fostering entrepreneurship and changing the mindset of a child in that environment. That's the one part with business. The second part, I challenge academia now to start focusing their efforts, going to the rural areas, to the high schools, so that a child in the high schools understand what choices to take. If it's aviation, then that's where it should be starting. Most of these kids are unfortunately limited with information to even understand what aviation is. Thank you.
Shoo, ladies, hey? We're almost there. So, is the technology approach that is being taken for the Gen Y generation specifically, does it align with the skill set that is there? Technology approach that is being adapted for Gen Y?
Yeah, so I completely, the skill set is lacking, and that is the big problem, really. So if you want to be using technology to create applications, to solve problems by, creating applications is like the thing now for everything, create an app, but you don't know how to do that, and also you don't have the resources of how to do that. I'd like to agree, because in the rural areas, for example, if you want to use the internet, you have to go to town. Sometimes it's like a half an hour ride. You have to use taxis and wait in the taxi, and it's like a whole thing just to go use an internet cafe. So even if you wanted to be able to be, get your finger on the technology, it's very difficult to do that because you don't have access to it. And the only ones who have access to it are those sitting in the city. But then, how do we improve access so that it's not something that you dream about to be involving technology or using technology to kind of be creative? How do we improve?
There are opportunities that are there for the youth, it sounds like, but we're always going back to the barrier of technology. So clearly, data does play a role into ensuring that a lot of people are left out. I think let's cover a few questions that are being asked by the audience.
Sorry, just
do you want to touch on?
Yeah,
do you want to add on?
Just to add on to that, companies are, and every company that has presented here through these few days, companies are preparing for, as much as Dr. Linda Meyer did say that we are, the fourth industrial revolution is so 2018. We are actually talking about the past, and that's what we seem to be aiming for. Unfortunately, as a continent, that is where we stand, unfortunately. Technology does exist that they are creating, that the companies are using. Again, I stick to aviation on my side. The only thing is we need to keep up with what the generations that are following us and our current generation is currently experiencing on their cell phone. So if you can bring that to what they'll be experiencing in the workplace, how you issue the documentation that they are supposed to be using, how you share the information. As Dr. Malinga said, that we are a sharing generation. All we want to do is, I am going to sleep now, I am waking up now. So we wanna, they want to know that we are communicating on their level. And the technology exists, we've got radar screens, we've got everything, but now the problem is, it's not our own creation that we are using within our companies because of where we stand as a continent. We are having to borrow equipment or ideas from already developed areas who are most probably now on their next step of the type of equipment they'll be using, and we're now using they taking out of the door so that we can be able to at least keep up with the industry. But aviation is developing. We've got the drones. We need to get the regulations in place. We've got the radar screens. We just need to make sure that Botswana is actually able to is competitive with South Africa. And it does not help if you develop as one country and the rest of the continent gets left behind, regardless of where you are.
So we should stop becoming producers,
we need
consumers,
we need to start creating for our own people, yes.
100%, yeah. Lebo?
When you speak around technology, colleagues, I just remembered something. If some of you know, South Africa is part of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. We know about that. And I think most of us know what those countries are good at. And if you're speaking about technology, if you look at the BRICS Council, the BRICS Council has got 9 working groups. Within those 9 working groups, I'm going to tap on the 2. One is around skills development, and one is really specifically around aviation itself. So if you look at the purpose of the BRICS collaboration, is to really foster that public-private partnerships with the emerging economics, and we are able to learn from each other. from the technology, from the infrastructure, from the skills, whichever it may be, that we can learn from each other. Obviously, South Africa right now is not at the same level as any of those countries. So we need to tap and really understand what is happening within the BRICS Business Council that can really now be fostered within all the industries. That's the first thing. But the second thing that I want to bring forward when we're talking about technology, you must always remember that, and I'm not so certain around aviation to such a larger extent. If you look at the curricula in the universities, we must start asking ourselves, what is the future curricula and what are the future skills already? Because if the future skills and the future curricula does not enable technology, then we are doomed as a country. So we need to start supporting academia and really explaining as to which technology, which emerging technologies are there that are supporting the industry currently. And also on their side, they need to start aligning, aligning specifically the curricula for the future. So already you start with it from a younger age in the university, and already the youth can start growing with it in their spheres.
Thank you very much, ladies. Let's just go through some of the questions and comments. But before that, I know it's been a long day. Can we just all stand very quickly for these ladies? Just quickly. Can we all just stand? Thank you very much. Left hand up. Right hand up. Thank you very much. Let's sit down. So the first question from Konzi Hlope is asking us, how can organizations offer Gen Y to become attractive to them and get the best out of them?
By the companies bring out their big guns. For instance, no, I'm serious though. SAA, it was a drive that they are currently still running actually. They went through the media. And in going through the media, they understand that people know that there are planes that exist. And I always tell this story when I was playing Martini on the street, and the only thing I knew about aviation was a plane passing by, and I always assumed Mandela was in there. So we always asked for him to give us sweets. So they never came. But by them bringing out their big guns, the SAA is actually going out to the schools and letting the children come and play with their simulators, with their flight simulators. ATNS is going to the schools and letting the children actually play around with crashing planes into each other just to see how you think. The websites have interactive games. So the best way to attract is by going, actually need to step up to their level, not come down to their level. We need to step up to their level. We need to make things more fun. We are recruiting people that are coming straight from being matriculants, because aviation, unfortunately, not a lot of what we do is provided in universities. Everything is provided by the company that is going to be hiring you. So when they come to you and they say, this is how our job is done, and look how interactive it is, and you are not going to be laying back and not understanding what you're doing, here's what we do. And if they bring it to them and they bring out their big guns, and I'm in a flight simulator, listen, tomorrow I'm waking up and I'm a pilot, and we are not negotiating it. So they need to bring out their big guns, and the best way to make sure that the people stay is, now you need to start where you are willing to finish. Where you have started is, I've brought you in. Now, to keep you here, I am going to make sure that I change my policies and regulations to accommodate your generation and the fact that you are constantly on the phone and you don't believe that I should be at work to work. And people are making millions of rands through being on Twitter alone.
Yeah.
Imagine if you took aviation to that level.
Crazy. Sounds like we're dealing with a very different type of generation altogether. You know, we have to change our way of doing things in the organization just to accommodate a certain generation. That's the only question that you actually had time for. Thank you very much, ladies. I think this was an insightful panelist discussion. I think one of the best out of them all. Thank you very much. Let's clap for them.
Thank you so much, ladies. We do know that there's low youth employment, but I think it's also attributed to these technologies that are automating everything. I think we need to make sure that in the future with these technologies, we create other jobs. Thank you so much. Please stay on stage. We'd like to call upon Ms. Ndo and Ms. Sabona to give our panelists and the speakers their gifts, please. While they are coming down, may we please remind you to leave feedback on the app that was created for us by Dynamic Data. Thank you so much, guys. Oh, my apologies, DNA Data. I apologize for that. Thank you so much for the interactive app. It was beautiful. Thank you, ladies. Would like to remind you again to post all your pictures and comments, the AVIAFRIQUE 2019, on our ATNS pages. The handle is at ATNS SA. Please don't forget to use the hashtag AVIAFRIQUE 2019. Please also remember to register at the front desk if you haven't done so we can give you information that we might have in the future of all ATNS events. Thank you so much, ladies. Please give them a round of applause. Next, we'd like to, last on our program that is, we'd like to call off on the executive of ATM and CNS Planning, Mr. Jeffrey Machoba. Mr. Jeffrey Machoba will be giving us the vote of thanks. We'd like to thank the organizing team for the phenomenal work done. We'd also like to thank you for interacting with us on all our platforms and for coming to the Innovation Summit this year. We hope we've met all your expectations. If we have, please give us feedback. If we haven't, which I hope not, please still give us feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Directors, Master of Ceremonies. We have come to the end of this prestigious event. I can't wait for a day where, as a passenger, I know that I'm going to miss my connecting flight somewhere, and the operator or the airline operator sent me a text to tell me that they are aware that I'm going to miss my connecting flight, so therefore, these are my options for me to reach my destination. I think the technology allows us to do that, so I can't wait for the operators. Sida, we need to move towards that space. I can't wait for a moment when an ATC doesn't talk to aircraft, but look at the screen and monitor the movement of aircraft. It's coming, and you must prepare for that moment. Yes, I was waiting for that. We have come to the end of the Avi Afrique Innovation Summit. Apologies, first of all, from our CEO and the chairman of the board. The CEO is attending to a urgent family matter, and you have already seen that the chairman was not well yesterday. He had a car accident, so he sacrificed his well-being yesterday by being here. So apologies from them. We started on Wednesday with a program involving the school learners. I think that went very well. Those learners, they come from different provinces, and the idea was for ATNS to expose those learners into various careers within aviation, and also to share with those learners the innovation and encourage them to be innovative. You know, so it's to instill that innovation whilst they are still young. I was intrigued by the fact that they were given various tasks. Some of them, they were not easier. Some of them, they were very challenging. And I can show you the baby boomers and the Gen X. If we can give you those challenges, I don't think you'll be able to execute, no pun intended. And then obviously day 2, we started with the Innovation Summit. That was yesterday. We saw different presentations and panel discussions. I was really excited to see the vertical takeoff from Pegasus. I think that's an opportunity for Uber and Pegasus to collaborate on that issue. We also saw some disruptors discussions, the vulnerability to cyber attacks, and the future workforce that is coming. Exposure, it's Dr. Motapa, I think this is an opportunity for ATNS to be selfish now. We want to give you a challenge. Through Stellenbosch, we want to ask you to go and investigate what will be the competencies and the future of a future ATC. I'm talking about 10 years to come, because we'll be doing things differently. So maybe next year or in 2 years' time, if you can come back and share with us what will be the competency and skills that are required for our future ATCs. You know, our ATCs, it's going to be a huge change. Our ATCs, they like talking to aircraft. And when nothing is happening, aircraft are separated and they don't have to talk, they get bored. And they will say, Springbok 235 report position, just for the fun of it. On behalf of the ATNS board, the ATNS management, the staff at large, would like to thank the Minister of Transport, MP Mbalula, for gracing us with his presence and delivering his keynote address, which I believe you will agree with me that it was very moving. The acting DDG, Mayor Mama Bolo, and her staff, all our speakers, panelists, sponsors, and app administrators. I think it's very important to acknowledge Dynamic DNA for the work that they have done. If I can appeal with them to keep this app running for maybe until Monday, so that we can post questions and then we can respond. Those who are able to respond, if we can respond, please, if we can do that only up until Monday, I'll be really happy. I think it is important to single out the winner of the white paper that you saw, Mr. Twala. I think it's very encouraging to see those innovations that are coming. Thanks to our 3 Master of Ceremonies, I think you'll agree with me that they did a brilliant job. A round of applause for those. Yeah, they were magnificent. Yako, he will never disappoint you. You give him the stage, he's natural. He will do exactly that. Thanks to Nombumelelo as well as Naledi, you guys did very, very well. This event could not have been possible without the local organizing committee. You know, we start in January to prepare for this, and things like, for instance, up to March already, we would have concluded the program, we would have identified the speakers, and every month we have to get a new speaker, because each and every month, those that you have identified, they do cancel. So I think half of the speakers of 2019 summit will form part of our next year's summit, because they showed their dedication and passion, especially the last part. I'm not saying, please hear me carefully, I'm not saying they were the best panel. I'm saying they were very passionate about the subject that they are doing. Whilst I'm concluding, I would like to call the LOC to come in front for a group photo, and for you to be able to see them and acknowledge them with a round of applause when they come on stage. Lastly, I think we had this summit running for about eight years now, and we have employed different strategies as well as different models to see which ones would we like to employ. And we are at the level where we're very excited about the future of both the Avi Awards as well as the Aviation Innovation Summit. As you travel to your various destinations, please do so safely. We'd like to acknowledge especially everyone who has stayed behind up until the last day. Our board member, General Ngema, would like to acknowledge, we acknowledge the captains of the industry. We acknowledge and thank everyone, all the delegates, your questions through the app. We're trying to be innovative. Please support that initiative. And thank you to myself for being able to say thank you to you. Thank you, thank you. As they are coming, we'll take a group photo and then we'll disperse. We will see you next year around this time. We'll communicate the date as early as January. Thank you very much. Mpumi. You need to share this. They are worried about their shoes. They said, yo, our shoes. Because their local organizing committee, they did not wear their best shoes. Please don't look at their shoes.
Thank you again, Mr. Machoba, as the project sponsor for this whole event. Your leadership has been appreciated. We're looking forward to seeing all of you here again next year. We hope you're inspired to go make a difference out there, and then to come and tell us about that next year, in how we change the country and the continent, as the previous speaker alluded to, one by one. And thank you for your presence, the speakers, the panelists, the moderators, and the delegates and the ATNSers. We love you.
Thank you so much. Lunch will be served at the exhibition hall. Thank you.